He had never seen a building. To him, the world was only made of stone, earth, and sky. He never heard the roar of a car. He could never imagine a life beyond the daily fight for survival. And then, in just one heartbeat, the reality he knew shattered. Time itself began to bend. He was thrown into a future of neon and steel, a world that felt like a dream or a nightmare. Thousands of years ago, before the first stone of any city was ever laid, before technology, and before a single word of our history was even written, a man lived in a world of silence. He hunted for his life with his bare hands. He slept under the vast open sky, fearing the shadows of the night. Every day was a brutal battle, not for success, but simply to stay alive. His world was small, only his tribe, his land, and his primal instincts. But then on one quiet night, something in the world changed forever. The sky above him suddenly lit up, a glow that had never been seen before. It wasn't the warmth of a fire. It wasn't the quick flash of lightning. This was something cold, something completely unnatural to his primitive eyes. He looked up, frozen in terror. The light grew stronger, drawing closer every second. The brightness consumed everything. He tried to run, but there was nowhere to hide. Silence, a void so deep that even the memory of the wind was gone. Total silence. The world he knew had vanished into a sea of white. And then, a spark of life returned. A new reality began to take shape. He opened his eyes. But the world he saw was no longer his own. The ground beneath his feet was no longer soft dirt. It was cold and dangerously hard. The air felt strange. It was heavy, filled with a metallic scent he could not name. He stood up slowly, his primitive muscles trembling. And then he finally saw it. Giant structures of glass and steel touching the very edge of the dark sky. Lights were everywhere. Moving objects, faster than any animal he had ever hunted. He didn't understand. This was no longer his land. This was a nightmare of iron. People walked past him in a blurred rush, talking, laughing, and completely ignoring his presence. Their clothes were strange, glowing with soft lights and fabrics that shimmered like liquid metal. Their behavior felt unnatural. They moved with a cold efficiency, lost in worlds only they could see. He tried to communicate, reaching out a trembling hand, but no one understood his primal language. To them, he was just another broken man, another ghost in the gears of a perfect machine. To him, they were something else entirely. They were no longer human, they were shadows of glass. Suddenly, a thunderous sound echoed through the metal canyons, a roar he had never heard. He turned his head sharply. A massive shadow of steel was rushing directly toward him. It grew faster and louder, a predator of chrome and light screaming through the streets. He froze in place, just like a cornered prey waiting for the final fatal blow. The vehicle screeched to a halt, stopping just inches away from his trembling body. A man stepped out shouting in anger, but the caveman heard no words, only the sound of a threat. His breathing grew heavy and ragged, a primal rhythm of fear in a world of machines. His eyes darted in a state of pure panic, searching for a familiar shape that wasn't there. Very where he looked, the world felt wrong. Alien structures of light and cold metal. There were no trees, no silence to comfort him. No nature left to protect his spirit. Hushed noise. An endless, deafening roar of a city that never stops to breathe. For the first time, he wasn't fighting the wild. He was fighting to survive civilization. He ran with every bit of strength he had left, his primitive heart pounding against his chest. He dashed through endless streets of cold metal, blinded by the flickering neon lights. He pushed through crowds of people who didn't even notice his fear, a ghost in the machinery. But there was no escape. The more he ran, the deeper he sank into the neon labyrinth. The world surrounded him like a predator, closing him in with walls of glass and steel. Trapped in a time that wasn't his, a prisoner of a future he could never understand. He finally stopped. His breath came in ragged gasps, his body broken by the chase. Exhausted, lost in a sea of lights, more alone than he had ever been in the wild. He looked at the people around him. They weren't hunting, they weren't hiding. They weren't surviving the same way he was. They were safe, yet they looked empty. But something felt deeply wrong. A cold void that even the brightest neon couldn't fill. Something was missing. The connection, the fire, the soul of what it means to be alive. In a world where humans conquered everything, from the earth to the very stars above. One man from the past looked at this perfect future and realized something truly terrifying. He saw the cold steel, the flickering lights, and the hollow eyes of a ghost civilization. Maybe, despite all the neon and the machines, they didn't actually win. Maybe they just found a more beautiful way to lose what it means to be human. And as the lights faded, he knew the truth. They were more lost than he ever was.